Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my reaction to Ilia Topuria winning via KO in round 1 versus Charles Oliveira. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, so please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon. Got a few members now. If you want to just show support to the channel, it's been a very good week in the way of predictions for me, or if you're wanting to, request any sort of combat sports related content, then feel free to head over there. Really appreciate all of the support. But yes, let's get into this video. So, Ilia, of course, he's gone up and he's showcased that the power is there and he carries it above into a new division, and he knocks out one of the top contenders, one of the fan favourites yet again in Charles Oliveira, and now he becomes UFC lightweight champion. I mean, again, like I say, he showcased that power still was there to be carried. I mean, perhaps Oliveira was maybe letting his ego win a little bit and was standing and trading perhaps a bit more so than you would recommend with somebody like a Topuria, but the way that he threw them strikes and the way that the shots in which he landed, the two that he landed to then drop Oliveira, I mean, that's a pure boxing move. That is a brutal selection of punches to land to be able to drop an opponent, and that is the first time we have seen Oliveira out like that before. And so, yes, Oliveira wasn't on perhaps the best of runs. I mean, he was coming off a win against Michael Chandler, but it wasn't as convincing as Paddy's win against Chandler. And, before that he was coming off a loss, but nobody was still expecting anything realistically this devastating by Topuria. And again, like I say, he's showcased that the power carries up a division, but he also showcased that he can out wrestle to an extent somebody like an Oliveira. I mean, he is such a well-rounded fighter, Topuria, and I think he did showcase for a little bit during that fight. There was a time in which perhaps Oliveira risked or, threatened the leg lock, but for the most part, Topuria showcased that he could wrestle, and he got onto a nice side guard and went for a crucifix at one point before inevitably standing up, because still, you don't want to be wrestling with Oliveira. So, like I say, he showcased he can wrestle, but then when it came to standing toe to toe, he went out there, he did the job, and he got him out of there, like I say, in brutal fashion, yet again performing on the biggest of stages. And I don't know if the fans are for him or against him realistically, but you just got to give him the respect that he deserves. The names in which he's going through, the kind of resume in which he's picking up, it's just brutal. It's great to see. And I mean, you have these McGregor comparisons in which there's quite a few of them, to be completely honest. I didn't kind of notice how many there were until this fight. I mean, he's 28 years of age, which is the same age in which McGregor came double champ, and then he also beat a former top world champion in Volkanovski when he was 27, just like McGregor did with Aldo. And he's, like I say, won the same titles. He's got a very similar back tattoo, and now he's even kind of using the same sayings. I mean, he had his face off with Pimblett in the cage, and he said he's going to rest his balls on his forehead, and that's the same thing that McGregor says. So, like I say, there really is a lot of similarities between the two of them. They're both going out and getting these early stoppages. McGregor obviously is at a completely different point in his career now, but back then, they're now both doing the same thing. And I suppose to an extent it is a bit of a maybe a reincarnation to an extent, but you'd like to hope that Ilia, he's going to go down the better route. He's going to keep trying to fight the best guys. He's going to keep trying to push himself. That's what he seems to be doing, and he isn't hopefully going to go down any sort of kind of bad route, just like I suppose McGregor has to an extent. Well, definitely has. But at least, I mean, even McGregor, to be fair, he's given the kind of props to Topuria, and everybody's seen that one clip in which McGregor said he beat up Top Turo, but now he's actually given the credit to Topuria. And yeah, so you've even got the respect from McGregor. You have to give Topuria respect of what he's been doing. I mean, obviously he's now the 10th UFC world champion to be a two-weight world champion, and so there's only 10 people in the history of the UFC to have done that. So you, of course, again, you got to give him that credit. Obviously he faced off against Pimblett, which was an interesting thing to see, because I mean, everybody knows the back and forths in which both of them had when they were both kind of on the undercard, on the prelims of shows. And now when now that Ilia has moved up into the lightweight division, of course now Paddy's in that division as well, but you would perhaps say that Pimblett Is he deserving of a world title shot straight away? Yes, he won dominatingly against Chandler. And again, like I say, making that comparison, Oliveira has just gotten a title shot and won not as dominatingly. But, still, Oliveira had that history of being a champion, and Pimblett hasn't got that just yet. And when you have, the likes of an Arman Sarukian, who was also in the same arena, he's a much higher ranked fighter. And then, of course, you've been talked about perhaps Ilia versus Islam happening. To just kind of skip that and have Paddy Pimblett come up into the cage is an interesting one. It seemed like that was orchestrated by Joe Rogan. And, of course, before that, we had the Pantoja versus Van face-off, and that was a good face-off. And, it ended up being entertaining for the fans, the Ilia versus Paddy face-off. But Dana, you could tell, he said he wasn't happy. He said he wouldn't have allowed it if he's actually seen what was going on. He said he'd already walked back to his kind of office or whatever before then. So, does it mean that that fight isn't going to happen? Is Dana going to step in and not allow that fight to happen next? Like I say, we will have to wait and see. But that definitely, of course, is a fan favourite fight. And I mean, for Charles, I think it is. Obviously, it's really sad to see that he got knocked out in the first round, but I don't think he should retire. I don't think his career is over just like that. I think he can still have some big matchups, and I think he should probably move up into the welterweight division. I mean, the welterweight division is thriving at the moment. It is arguably the best, most stacked division in the UFC currently. So I think if he moved up into that division, he could cause a lot of fighters troubles due to, again, his style. I feel like he's always going to be a risk with his submission threat. And again, if he goes up, I mean, he probably won't be able to jump straight into a number one contenders fight, or maybe he will. Maybe he'll have to kind of work his way up. But I think he could definitely, like I say, move up into that welterweight division because he's always been a big lightweight, and maybe he could fight somebody like a Michael Morales or an Ian Gary or even a Brady to an extent, because Brady's struggling to get an opponent at the moment. Again, like I say, I mean, maybe give Oliveira a bit of time kind of out of the ring to recover from the fact that he's just been knocked out bad. Maybe a year or two, then we see what the landscape of the welterweight division is, and then maybe Charles could slot into that. And again, that wouldn't surprise me if that does possibly happen. But to move on to the co-main event now, so Alexandre Pantoja won via submission in round 3 versus Kai Kara France, and that was a very dominating performance. I think that's the best way to put it, to be completely honest. I mean, now he's had his 4th title defense of his UFC flyweight title, and yeah, that was a complete shutout victory. He weren't wary of Kai's power at all, even though Kai, of course, was coming off a very good knockout against Ursig the fight before, and he just went straight at him, straight away got his back. It seemed like in every single round he ended up getting his back, and he just did it with ease, and he just, like I say, had all-round domination in that fight to eventually be able to go out there and get the submission. And I think he's now showcasing that he is just how dominant of a fighter he is, and just how good of a fighter he is as well, because I suppose to an extent, similarly to what Dvalishvili is doing now, he's kind of turning this domination to actually going and getting stoppages. He's got back-to-back stoppages now against Asakura and Kara France. He's showcasing the difference between a contender and an actual world title ranked fighter. Of course, when he first became champion, he fought Royval, he fought Moreno, went to decisions against both of them, but against, like I say, Asakura, Kara France, he's been looking completely dominating and was able to both at times get submissions, and again, like I say, relatively do it with ease. And the way that he can get the back, the way that he can get his, get the submission in, get the arm under the neck is just, like I say, it seems like it's a very comfortable thing, which you can tell he trains a significant amount. And even then, to be fair, his striking was outstriking Kara France as well. He has a bit of a unique style in the way of his guard, but for the most part, his kicks were very strong, and it was, again, I mean, the only way you can really put it is a dominating performance. And I think he is finally getting the respect that he deserves. I mean, I don't think that Kai was ever realistically at the same level as Pantoja, and I did kind of think that going into their matchup. And I mean, I got my prediction right for this one as well. I mean, both of these fights I got my prediction pretty much right. I mean, I said that Pantoja would win by a sub in round 2, and I said that Ilia would win by a KO in round 5. But still, both kind of right there. But yeah, like I say, I just didn't think that Kai was at the same level as Pantoja, and I think, like I say, still Pantoja is getting the respect that he finally deserves. I think he will get bumped up a few spots in the pound for pound rankings, which I was talking about in my prediction video, which I feel like he definitely deserves. So hopefully that will happen for him next. But yeah, to speak about another flyweight fight, which is going to be the opponent of Pantoja next time, you would like to think, and that is Joshua Van, as he won via unanimous decision versus Brandon Royval. It was an excellent fight. It was such a high action fight where Van was able to, for the most part, shorten up his shots to make them land cleaner, and was landing on so good. He was coming in on short notice, and maybe he would have been able to win even more significantly if he'd had that more time to train. I mean, before that, he'd only fought 3 weeks before that. I just don't think I've heard a story like this with a fighter where they've, you know, come into the scene about and just kind of put the scene on notice with a knockout a few weeks before, still only being ranked in the 12th position, and then going and getting a number one contender slot because somebody dropped out on short notice, winning that, and then straight away getting jumped into a title shot. It's all moved so quickly for Joshua Van, and it's great for him. He's definitely a fan favorite. Like I said, I've just not seen this much hype in the flyweight division in a while, and it's great to see. I mean, the flyweight division really deserves some hype and some attention because of how skilled the fighters are. And I mean, this was a great fight. I knew that with Royval it was always going to be an entertaining contest. I didn't expect it to be this good, but I think Van showed a lot in this fight. Like I say, for the first 2 rounds, he was really showcasing the better boxing on the inside. When Royval was coming in with the longer shots, he was shortening up his shots, Van, to then be able to kind of sneak through, and land the more significant shots than that of Royval. And then he started chopping down with the side kick to the leg of Royval, and then got the knockdown in the final few seconds, which possibly won him that final round. It depends which way you look at it. And yeah, like I say, I mean, I think again, the reason why perhaps this has gotten even more hype for Joshua Van is the fact that we had Tyra coming and moving up in the flyweight division not too long ago, but that was somebody who was a new name and was getting a bit of hype behind him, but then Royval just went and shut him down. So the fact that Royval wasn't able to do that again to another top contender in Joshua Van, it's just great to see. Again, like I said, I think it's refreshing. I think the UFC flyweight division have been so deprived of new names for so long because of how good the actual top contenders are. You got to give credit to the likes of a Royval and a Moreno, but still, now it's the time for Joshua Van to get this opportunity. He's only 23 years of age. I think he was the youngest fighter on the card, which is just crazy. And the level of IQ I feel like he showed, saying how young he is, it's so impressive. Obviously, he didn't showcase much wrestling in this fight, and he didn't in his last fight either. And so he hasn't been made to wrestle on a high stage yet. And I mean, I've just talked about Pantoja's wrestling, so that is something that perhaps might be something that he might need to be focusing on for the world title shot for himself. But everybody is now ready for Pantoja versus Van, and perhaps this could be a main event for the flyweights. I mean, so often we've seen this flyweight division have these world title fights being in the co-main because the fans aren't as excited for it as they would be for a main event fight, and it's just not main event fight worthy, I suppose, to certain people. But I feel like this definitely could be, and like I say, creating this hype in a division with such skilled fighters, it's about time. And again, it seems like that's always the resurrection of the flyweight division. There's been a few times where this division's almost kind of been forced to fold just to two kind of few minimal names that are actually in the division, but then every so often there's a big fight that happens, somewhat like a Johnson versus a Cejudo. I'm not comparing that fight to this, but like I say, some new names, some excitement in it, and then it reignites the division again, and that's what seemingly is happening here. And then one more fight in which I wanted to touch upon was Beneil Dariush winning via unanimous decision versus Renato Moicano. I saw that this definitely did kind of mess up a few parlays for people out in America because a lot of people were expecting Moicano to be able to get through Dariush, and I mean, Dariush was on such a bad slide and he hadn't been fighting regularly at all. And yes, Moicano was coming off a bad loss to Makhachev, but that is a whole different level to that of a Dariush. But I mean, Moicano, yes, almost dropped and got out Dariush in that first round. Well, we did drop him, but he almost got him out of there. But then as soon as Dariush was able to survive that first round, he got he got a few good takedowns going, and he got his wrestling going, and he showed that he wasn't a shot fighter that everybody was thinking. And again, now he's put himself in a good position again, and perhaps has reignited his career at 36 years of age. Again, I don't know what that's going to mean for his career, if he's going to be able to lead him into getting a good opportunity next. I'm not entirely sure. He might still have to be, fighting another really tough top contenders fight before he gets a favourable matchup in his favour. But for the moment, like I say, he showcased a lot in that fight and silenced a lot of people in that fight as well. And Moicano, I mean, you would probably have to think, yes, he's entertaining on the mic, but back-to-back defeats. Obviously, he did the UFC a favour stepping up and staving that card against Makhachev, but now he's not been able to get through Dariush. He probably will be having to fight an unranked contender who's got the hype and the momentum behind him to be able to really kind of deservingly stay in the rankings at this point. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.